Part 294. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2938. After a show was finished, Bai Shan led a group of little ghosts to dance the exorcism dance for people. He was the best at this, because every time he went to the street to watch a Nyo show, they liked to dance around him and Zhou Manbei. Segment dance. Of course, after the dance, they always have to give each other some money. Everyone happily walked along Kinmen Street, and the people of Bihai County followed the crowd and said, "Although I rarely watch Nyo operas, but the Lord of Hell loves to dance too much, right? I jumped at my child twice, and I don't want to give him money. He also danced at me, don't say, he danced pretty well. He is the most imposing, as expected of Lord Yama." Everyone surrounded the Nyo opera team and slowly walked away. More than half of the county Yamen gate was empty, and a small half of people were persistently queuing up to receive rice dumplings. However, this speed is also fast. Zongzi are all steamed in advance, one per person, not many. Go up one for the other, they take the Zongzi and go after the crowd. Seeing that the team was in order, Fang Xiancheng exhaled and turned around to look for someone. Fortunately, the Nyo opera took people away. "By the way, where's the county magistrate?" With a face full of words, Dong Xianwei pointed at the crowd that was about to disappear. Fang Xiancheng frowned. "It's getting late, adults should be ready to go to Qingzhou City. Why are you still going to join in the fun at this time?" Dong Xianwei glanced at him. "Fang Xiancheng, the adults are not going to join in the fun, but to be fun." Fang Xiancheng was puzzled. Lieutenant Dong Xian looked up at the sky 45 degrees with his hands behind his back, and said with a worried and sad expression, "Our county magistrate is going to pretend to be Lord Yama himself." Fang Xiancheng. Fang Xiancheng was stunned. Not to mention Fang Xiancheng, the entire county government was shocked to know this. "Impossible, did you read it wrong? How can adults dance Nyo opera?" "It's absolutely true, that's the county magistrate. Although I'm wearing a mask, but I've been with you for so many days, can I still not recognize the magistrate? Is that temperament and stature comparable to that of ordinary people?" "I saw it too, it's the magistrate," and Lieutenant Dong also said it's the magistrate. Most people haven't seen Bai Shan's appearance, but the Yamen officers are all on duty today. When everyone gets together, you can pass me a message and I'll tell the other one, and the county Yamen will know about it soon. Unbelievable, adults can actually dance Nyo opera. Isn't that the lower Reba? Isn't it? I heard that there were nobles who used Nyo opera to worship and pray for blessings, but the county magistrate danced Nyo opera. Unimaginable, really unimaginable. A group of Yamen, look at me, I'll look at you, and finally all went to the street together. No one was lazy anymore, but ran to Wei Dongxian. "Lieutenant Dong, let's go to the street to maintain order." "Yes, there are a lot of people taking to the streets today, but they can't be crowded." Everyone ran away, catching up with the big team and finding that they couldn't squeeze in. The further down you go, the more people you attract, and the whole street is full of people. The people didn't know that it was their county magistrate who played the role of Lord Yama, but Bihai County rarely had such an event. Even the villagers from the surrounding villages went to the city early to watch Nyo opera and get zongzi. Zhou Man was escorted by Daji and two guards as he shuttled through the crowd, and followed by Shan while dancing, but there were too many people, and the four of them were squeezed apart in a short while. Only Dagil followed her closely because he was holding her arm. Zhou Man had no choice but to withdraw, and at the next stall, the other party was selling sweet wine, so she asked for a bowl, took off the mask, and exhaled, "There are too many people, go back to the county government and call the servants to maintain order." Daji responded, but looked at Zhou Man and didn't move. She raised two fingers and said, "I swear, I will never squeeze in to watch the fun." Daji just left. Zhou Man exhaled and turned to look at the crowd of onlookers, only to realize that many people were not from Bihai County. Since she came to Bihai County, she has been walking around the streets and alleys, not to mention familiar with human faces, at least clothes, hats, and shoes. People living in every place in the city have some common characteristics. Looking at the crowd watching the crowd, it was obvious that they had come from the countryside to the city, while others were dressed as scribes, and they should have come from other counties, or from the villages below to go to the city. Zhou Man is very happy about this, which shows that Bihai County has attracted people to come here. Dong Xianwei quickly brought the remaining yamen over, beating gongs and drums to summon all the yamen who wanted to squeeze in and join in the fun, and then the team stepped forward to divert the crowd, finally making the crowd less crowded. The county town is that big, and they only jump one street. From the beginning of Shenzhen, they jumped all the way to the end of the street, and took 2 breaks in the middle, saying that they should wear masks to interact with the onlookers during the rest. Wait until the end of the street is exactly noon. The people were still not satisfied, so they gathered around the ghosts to bless them. Bai Shan quietly withdrew from the crowd, got on the carriage under the support of Daji and other guards, turned directly into another street, and went around the road back to the county office. Bai Shan stripped off his clothes in the car. He jumped out of the carriage wearing only a middle coat, and when he saw Fang Xiancheng standing at the door, he smiled at him, thinking that he was still wearing a mask. He took off the mask, threw the clothes to the guards, and said to Fang Xiancheng as he walked in, "I'm sorry, this county will clean up." Fang Xiancheng. Bai Shan turned the mask on his hand and returned to the backyard happily. Seeing that Zhou Menyi had just come back, he asked her excitedly, "Did you see it? How did I dance?" Zhou Man praised him generously, gave a thumbs up and said, "Amazing." Bai Shan became complacent, "I also think I can dance well." Mei has hurriedly prepared hot water, and when she came out, she hesitated when she saw the 2 of them. "Lang Jun, lady, who of you washes first?" "Me." "I come." The 2 spoke together, then looked at each other. Zhou Man turned around and ran towards the door, finally winning by a closer distance, jumping in the door, closing the door with a backhand snap, almost slapped the nose of Bai Shan who rushed up. Zhou Man bolted the door and shouted loudly, "I'll go first." Bai Shan could only touch his nose and back off. After the 2 had bathed, the family prepared lunch for them. Seeing him come out, Zhou Man pointed to the official document on the table and said, "Just now, Fang Xiancheng and Zhao Ming sent it, saying that it is what you need." Bai Shan then opened the official document while eating. He looked at it quickly, swiping through 10 lines at a time, and when he finished eating, he finished reading the official document. He closed it and put it aside and said, "Not bad." Man Bao was also full, turned his head to look at the sun outside, and sighed, "It's hard to go out at the moment." Bai Shan got up and scratched her nose, "Hurry up, it won't be good if it's too late." She could only get up and go out. Zhao Ming and Wen Tiandong were already waiting, and they could leave as long as they came out. Master Song looked at Zhao Ming, who left with Bai Shan, and became even more worried. Zhao Ming had been the master bookkeeper for a while before, so the magistrate Bai didn't want Zhao Ming to replace him, right? See you tomorrow. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2939. Bai Shan and Zhou Man rushed to Qingzhou City. The Dragon Boat Festival in Qingzhou City had just ended. The magistrates of all counties arrived in Qingzhou City one day earlier, so they were fortunate to participate in the event with Governor Guo. After the event, Governor Guo simply took them to the restaurant to have a lunch. They were full and satiated. They were sitting and drinking tea and chatting when the Yamen quietly came to report, "The governor of Bihai County, Bai County Magistrate and Qingzhou Doctor. Mr. Zhou from the department has arrived, and he is now in the governor's mansion." Inspector Guo looked at the time and found that the two of them came an hour earlier than expected. He was slightly satisfied and nodded, "Please come over. And let the shopkeeper of the restaurant serve a new pot of tea." The other magistrates who were sitting together couldn't help but glance at each other, and then secretly looked at the magistrate Lu beside him. The county magistrate looked at his nose and sat with his eyes down, as if he couldn't see everyone's gaze. Inspector Guo is already happy to introduce Bai Shanzoman to everyone. The county magistrate Bai just took office this year, and this is the first Dragon Boat Festival after he took office, so they have an event in the county, so they will be a little later than everyone else. Fortunately, we are having a dinner party, so we won't delay anything. All the county magistrates, it's as if they were not in the first year of their tenure, and it was not the first year to celebrate the Dragon Boat Festival with the people in the county. It is the county magistrate of Lu. He is also the new magistrate of Yuta County, not the old one. Inspector Guo looked at the crowd with a smile and said, "Speaking of which, the county magistrate Bai is the youngest magistrate among you, and he has never let it go. If it is not comprehensive, you can give him more pointers." All the county magistrates had a heart attack, and even the county magistrate felt that an arrow had been stabbed in the heart. This said, although they have experience in expatriation, Bai Shan's official position before expatriation is not only noble but also high quality. How can they give advice people? And they are all county magistrates now, right? Except for the governor of Guo, who is qualified to instruct the other party's actions. The magistrate Lu, who was sitting at the head of the provincial governor, sighed in his heart. As expected, Bai Shan was right. The governor wanted to bring Bai Shan up to suppress him. Bai Shan and Zhou Man quickly rushed over from the governor's mansion. As soon as the two entered the door, Governor Guo got up, and the others could only stand up to greet them. Inspector Guo was very measured. He bowed to Zhou Man first and said with a smile, "I haven't seen you for a long time. Lord Zhou's style is even better than before." Zhou Man smiled and said, "The governor has become more and more energetic." After questioning Zhou Man, Guo inspector looked at Bai Shan. This was the first time he had seen Bai Shan, so he couldn't help but look him up and down, and saw that he was wearing a moon-white auspicious cloud pattern round placket, and two milky white suet unicorn jade pendants hanging from the left and right of his waist, standing smiling. In front of him, it was like the bright moon and the breeze, and he couldn't help but admire the joy in his heart. Inspector Guo secretly said, "Fortunately, it is not in the capital, and there are no female dependents in this private room, otherwise I don't know how many women's hearts will be taken away." It is similar to Yang Heshu's popularity in Kyoto back then. Everyone has a love for beauty, and Governor Guo is no exception. He looked at Bai Shan and Zhou Man, only to realize that she was wearing a concubine-colored feather gauze dress, which looked playful and lively. Better than in the past, it turned out to be clothes. This is because he was dressed up on purpose. Guo Governor's banquet was so highly regarded, he was naturally happy, so he was even more happy, and couldn't help but praise, "I heard people talk about Baixian when I was in the capital. Yang Changbo can't bear the appearance of Lingzi, and it looks like this today." Bai Shan couldn't help but feel embarrassed. "The prefect is too famous, how can I be compared with senior brother Yang? Is the difference between him and senior brother Yang the same face? They are worse than a mother. I heard that Swexian Yang's mother was once recognized as the #1 beauty in the capital, so if he was as good looking as Swexian Yang, he would not only have to be reborn, but also have to change his parents." The county magistrate Lu and the others who were standing in the box didn't have any mood swings at all. They raised their eyelids and glanced at Bai Shan's little white face, sneering in their hearts. Sure enough, the little white faces were all the same. Just want to be complimented. They had never seen Yang Heshu before and thought that Bai Shan was already very good looking. No matter what they thought in their hearts, Guo inspector laughed happily for a while, then stretched out his hand and patted Bai Shan's shoulder and said, You are being humble, even if you are inferior, it is not much worse, and the two of you are still they are all full of poetry and books, and they are very talented. Inspector Guo smiled and asked, I remember that Magistrate Bai used to live in Mianzhou, so he should be very familiar with Inspector Yang. When he was in the capital, he heard people say that Bai Shan and Yang Heshu and Tang He had a very good relationship. In the officialdom, except for his wife Zhou Man, he and these two people were the closest. Inspector Guo sighed in his heart. He was 10 years earlier than Yang Heshu and Tang He, but he did not expect that their official positions are similar today. Even in terms of influence, he is not comparable to the two. Inspector Guo sighed in his heart, and he was also dead, so he smiled and pulled Bai Shan Zhou Man to the table. Bai Shan Zhen wanted to explain his relationship with Yang Heshu, but seeing that Governor Guo didn't care too much, he closed his mouth, smiled and saluted, and then sat down. Inspector Guo pulled Bai Shan to sit on the right, so the county magistrate Lu who was sitting on the left of Inspector Guo could only move down one position and give up his seat to Zhou Man. Because now in this room, in addition to Guo Shishi, Zhou Man has the highest official position. The magistrates felt a little sour when they saw that Governor Guo favored Bai Shan, but soon they couldn't help but quietly go to see the magistrate Lu. What are they? Originally, Governor Guo didn't like them very much, but the magistrate Lu was different. The county magistrate must be more uncomfortable than them at the moment. As long as there is one person who is more uncomfortable than them, they will feel much better. Looking at the expressionless county magistrate Lu, the magistrates exhaled a sigh of relief with a smile at the corners of their mouths. Inspector Guo and Bai Shan were talking about people and affairs in the capital. Although the magistrates present had all been to the capital and even met the emperor, no one could compare to Inspector Guo and Bai Shan in terms of understanding of the emperor. So they pricked up their ears and listened a little more now, which might come in handy in the future. Long before he left the capital, Guo Inspector heard people mention Zhou Man and Bai Shan. Zhou Man, he had met before, was indeed a woman different from ordinary women, but seeing that Bai Shan was well deserved, he couldn't help but talk to them. The couple have a good relationship. So he talked about relatives. Inspector Guo smiled and said, I really hate seeing the two of you very late. It's a pity that I couldn't go to Beijing in person when Huaner got married. It would have been nice if I had gone to the capital to meet the two of them. Bai Shan smiled and said, it's not too late to see you today. Although it's too late, the lower official is still convinced by the demeanor of the adults. Man Bao couldn't help but shivered slightly, feeling that his flattery was too numb, but Governor Guo was so happy that his eyes narrowed with laughter. See you at 6 p.m. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2940. In all, there are 7 counties under Guo governor, but except for Yudo County, the people's livelihood in other counties is somewhat poor. In addition to Yudo County, the magistrates of other counties were sent over last year and this year. It was not long before the governor Guo came. Although he took over the governor's house on the bright side, because the magistrate Lu managed the governor's house for half a year, he had a good relationship with the governor and Sima of the governor's house, not to mention the lower officials. Sometimes it takes about 2 days for the things passed down by the governor Guo to be done well, but if there is something on the Lu County magistrate's side, just say it, it can be done on the same day. Therefore, Inspector Guo urgently needed to raise a county to fight with Yudo County. He originally preferred Qiancheng County, but because of Bai Shan and Zhou Man, he now preferred Bihai County. Bihai County is not far from Qingzhou City. The most important thing is that they are relatives. Relatives, we need to help each other. Bai Shan also believed that they had to help each other. He could not only help Governor Guo integrate into Qingzhou faster and make political achievements for him, but also try to ease the conflict between him and the county magistrate. The county magistrate Lu was sitting on the sidelines watching his ally and Guo governor chat happily, and his heart was very complicated. After afternoon tea, Governor Guo led everyone back to the governor's mansion. He first asked the magistrates to rest for a while, but invited Bai Shan and Zhou Man to speak in the study. To the satisfaction of Governor Guo, Bai Shan immediately informed him and asked him for help after a serious incident such as robbery by mountain bandits occurred in Bihai County. This allowed the Governor Guo to participate in the county governance, which made him very satisfied. This is what the Inspector Guo called him to talk about this time. The magistrates who were taken down to rest looked at each other, and invariably gathered in the courtyard to talk. Seeing that the servants had served tea and then retreated, they could not help but relax a little, glanced at the county magistrate quietly and said, "I heard that there was a group of mountain bandits in Bihai County, and they even robbed the village, and a lot of people died. I also heard that all the turbulent incidents have already spread to our county, because the magistrate of Bai County is openly trying the case, and recently, some scribes in our county went to Bihai County to watch the fun. Oh, no, it's the court trial. Another county magistrate went to look at the county magistrate. Does this count as meritorious deeds by the magistrate of Bai? Although the mountain bandits were eliminated, but such serious bandit troubles appeared under the rule." He didn't finish his sentence, but the meaning was obvious. County Magistrate Lu finally put down the teacup in his hand, and said with some guilt, "The mountain bandits appeared when this official was in office, and even the looting incident occurred when this official was in office. Magistrate Bai has nothing to do with it." The other county magistrates looked at each other in dismay. "I didn't expect Magistrate Lu to accept it so readily. Saying that the Governor Guo valued Bai Shan so much, do you really stop struggling? Is it okay to just admit defeat?" At this time, Guo inspector was also discussing with Bai Shan about the dereliction of duty by the county magistrate. "Bai Shandao, the county magistrate Lu has indeed derelict his duties, but he can't be blamed for this. He said, the first time they robbed Xiaolai village was in September last year. At that time, only a few households were damaged. Because no one was hurt, only some property was lost, so the village chief only reported it to Lijhan. And at that time, it happened to be the 3-yearly selection of Lijhan, and he didn't report it out of selfishness." Bai Shan said, "The second time, that is, the one that killed people, was before the new year, when the county magistrate Lu had been transferred to Yudu. In Bihai County, Fang Xiancheng and Dong Xianwei acted for government affairs. Jia Lijhan discovered that the villagers under his control had formed a gang to loot the village, and because Jia Dalan and others were all from the same clan, he helped to hide it. The case is now very clear. Jia Dalan is lazy, and he is rampant in the countryside. He usually likes to gamble. He lost a lot of money last year, but he had a good face, and the expenses were very large. The first time he robbed Xiaolai village was an accident. I want to catch some game to sell in the county." As a result, the game didn't hit, and they went down the mountain to Xiaolai village on the other side. For a long time, there was only one road leading to the outside in Xiaolai village, and the road they walked out was so messy that it could not be called a road at all. But seeing that the village below was quiet and peaceful, the air seemed to be filled with the smell of wheat that had just passed after dinner. Jia Dalan, who had been hungry for almost a day, started to hate it from his heart, and took people to hide in the mountains for half the night. When it was completely dark and everyone fell asleep, he quietly found a few families on the side of the mountain. The movement alarmed others, but they were arrogant and fast, and they had knives in their hands that were specially brought for hunting. They directly threatened people to take out the money, and then ran away with a bag of grain. They went back the same way, but they didn't bring the food home. They took it directly to Daji and sold it. When they combined with the stolen money, they found that they were young and old, and it was almost equal to their annual income. So they took the money for a while, and after spending all the money, they still owed a lot of gambling debts. But this time, Jia Dalan, who had tasted the sweetness, was not in a hurry at all. He stared back and forth at Xiaoliu village several times, and found that although this village was small and poor, because it was almost isolated from the world, the fields inside were fertile, so in fact there is no shortage of food. They have a lot of food, more than their dying village. So Jia Dalan decided to do a big job, so he summoned all the brothers he could find, and found the opportunity to go in and grab the entire village. At that time, they almost emptied all the food in Xiaoliu village, as well as the savings of those villagers. That is the savings of generations of people in a village. Although he had to share a lot for his brothers, as the eldest, Jia Dalan still shared a lot, and those who were close to him also shared a lot. The result of this is obvious. Many people suddenly became rich in the two villages. Jia Lichhan has a bad personality, but his eyes are still very keen. He felt that something was wrong, so he walked around each house, and then found some incredible thing. In addition, the village chief of Xiaoliu village also came over and reported the case to him, saying that Xiaoliu village was looted. Jerry is not stupid, he knows who did it right away. When such a serious thing happened under the rule, most of the bandits were from their own clan, and Jia Lichhan decided to hide it without hesitation. Otherwise, the Jia family will not want to be a man in this area in the future. He could only hide it for Jia Dalan. Jia Dalan also knew that Jia Lichhan knew about it. Seeing him take action, he was generous and brought 2 chickens and 2 bags of grain directly to Jia Lichhan's house. Jerry is collecting things, so he can only cover up for them more carefully. Bai Shan said, so even though the magistrate Lu has neglected his duty, he can't be blamed entirely. He changed the subject and said, now Jia Lichhan and all the bandits are detained in the county government office, the lower official would like to hear your opinion on how to deal with it. See you at 9. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2941. Inspector Guo was very satisfied when he was asked for advice. He thought about it and then said, severely punished according to the law, these people are all local villagers, and even Tongli, who can do such things as looting the villagers, the folk customs have already corruption, if it is not severely punished to shock people's hearts, I am afraid that in the future, there will be people who will learn from them and become pirates. Robbery is definitely the fastest way to gather wealth in this world. For those who fell into trouble because of natural disasters and man-made disasters, Guo governor may also consider opening the door. But for these people who fell into trouble because of their bad hearts, Guo inspector felt that it would be no exaggeration to kill them all. Especially those who looted the villages were even more intolerable. In the final analysis, Dajin is still a society of acquaintances, and the same prefecture and county are more affectionate than strangers, not to mention Tongli. To put it bluntly, the water everyone drinks may come from a river. Even if it was a mountain bandit who fell into trouble during the famine years, he would go to other places to rob. Those who looted were mostly merchants who passed by, and looted local people. You should still be considered a human being, and will you bury them in the ancestral halls in the future? People who are bandits are evil, and the bandits who even rob the locals are even more evil, and they have lost even the most basic sense of shame. Bai Shan thought so too. He said, Jolly Zheng should be punished severely. Inspector Guo nodded, but still reminded, the local clan is intertwined, you have to be careful when you handle it. If the Jiao family is not easy to handle, you can postpone it, and don't make any more changes. Bai Shan responded. He added, Xiaolu village is too small, although the mountain bandits are not their fault, but because there are too many people involved, the local people are afraid that Xiaolu village will be excluded, and it will not be good to form a village feud, you should also find a way to get rid of it. Bai Shan respectfully replied yes. Inspector Guo pondered, this matter is actually a problem left over from the previous term. Obviously, he still wanted to put the blame on the head of the county magistrate, Bai Shan. For their crumbling covenant, Bai Shan could only continue to persuade, Inspector, the magistrate Lu is one of the most senior officials in Qingzhou. He has dereliction of duty in this matter, but it is not obvious. Besides, he is in Qingzhou. Has a good reputation. After an expedition last year, most of Kingshu's important officials were sacked, leaving only one county magistrate. Before that, the county magistrate Lu had no reputation, and then he became famous. Everyone else has something to do, but he stayed innocent and looked like a good official, not to mention that he was able to stabilize the chaos in Qingzhou after taking over the prefectural government. Not only did he have a good reputation in Qingzhou officialdom, also has a reputation among readers. Scribes from various counties have been discussing this new county magistrate in Yuta County for more than half a year, so Bai Shan's suggestion to Governor Guo is, your lord will hold him accountable at this time, and it will fall into the eyes of outsiders, so I am afraid that you have the heart. If it is too narrow, it is better to encourage generously and let the world see the magistrate's mind. Inspector Guo had been hesitating, he heard the words and sighed, forget it, that's it. After talking about the official affairs of the county town, the Governor Guo and Zhou Man talked about the medical office. Zhou Man said, Sir, I also brought the Qingzhou medical office pharmacopoeia Wen Tiandong this time. She smiled and said, he's my student, and he did very well in the imperial physician's office. If the medical office in Qingzhou city opens, I'll let him sit temporarily. Hearing this, Governor Guo looked back and forth at the two with a smile, and asked with a smile, Master Zhou's arrangement is very thoughtful. Zhou Man felt that he was thinking too much. The reason why she made this arrangement was not that she wanted to stay with Bai Shan in Bihai County, but because the medical office in Bihai County was at a critical time, and she had to keep an eye on it. It's on track. She has to write a report when she looks back, it's very important. But Governor Guo just made a joke and didn't continue, so Zhou Man couldn't find a chance to explain. Bai Shan reached out and squeezed her fingers quietly, and smiled at her when she saw her. Zhou Man gave him a glamorous and noble look, then withdrew his fingers, ignoring him. Inspector Guo took the two out, everyone sat down in the banquet hall, and finally started the theme of this banquet. Everyone talked about the development problems of the counties and the help they needed. Of course, Bihai County, which has recently had major problems, has been paid close attention to. Even if Inspector Guo and Bai Shan did not mention it, other county magistrates expressed concern about the mountain bandits. Bai Shan responded with an official reply. Seeing that Inspector Guo did not take the opportunity to attack the county magistrate, some magistrates took the initiative to say, Master Bai and the previous magistrate are both to blame for such serious bandit troubles under the rule. The county magistrate Lu took the initiative and said to Guo Shishi, this is indeed a dereliction of duty by a lower official, please punish your lord. However, Governor Guo sighed and said, you were already transferred from Bihai County when the incident happened, so it's not entirely your fault, but it is also your responsibility as a county magistrate to educate the commoners. Inspector Guo said to the 7 county magistrates, you should take this as a warning, and after you go back, promote loyalty, filial piety, benevolence and righteousness, and do a good job of educating. Don't think that educating is just watching the students in the county school, not many people are admitted. In government schools, how many people can pass the Mingjing Jinshi examination, and the education of the common people cannot be ignored. Bai Shan immediately stood up with the other magistrates, and respectfully responded yes to the governor of Guo. This matter was so lightly revealed. All county magistrates, the promised governor Guo and Lu county magistrate fight against each other. What a great opportunity to find fault, why did you let it go? The heart that the county magistrate had been holding quietly dropped half, and when he sat down, he couldn't help but glance at the Bai Shan and his wife opposite. Bai Shan was pulling out the chair for Zhou Man, but without meeting his eyes, Zhou Man pulled his sleeve. Bai Shan turned his head, nodding slightly at him while Guo inspector was not paying attention, and showing a smile. When the magistrate Lu returned home, he was still thinking. The county magistrate said, "You will have someone quietly send him a message in a while and ask him to prepare the official salt for next month." County magistrate Lu understood the principle of reciprocating favors, and said, "Qingzhou is poor, and Governor Guo planned to use King's Hu's official salt to make a way. It just so happened that he chose Bihai County to fight with me, so the requirements for official salt will definitely be higher. Not only quality, but also quantity. Let him expand the salt field, find a way to squeeze the Song family out of the salt field, and master the salt field." The master couldn't help but said, "My lord wasn't able to squeeze the Song family away at that time, can he?" The county magistrate said, "Let him try it," and compared to the original me, Bai county magistrate has more capital and more backing, but he has more confidence than me. As for whether he can do it or not, that's not something he should manage. Anyway, he has already given the news. How to do it is Bai Shan's business." The master responded and ordered the words in person. "I have homework tonight, so I still can't add more. See you tomorrow." Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2942. Bai Shan and Zhou Man lived in the inn. Although they had a shop in Qingzhou City, it was Lu Gui's residence. As far as comfort was concerned, it was naturally comfortable in the inn. The two smiled and greeted the other county magistrates before entering the house. As soon as the door was closed, the smiles on their faces fell, and then they lay on the bed face to face and didn't move. Daji came to knock on the door. The two of them didn't mean to move at all, and forced each other to open the door with their eyes. In the end, Bai Shan couldn't compete with Zhou Man. Seeing that Daji was so persevering, he could only get up and open the door. But he couldn't help complaining, "What else is going on at the moment? Don't know if he is tired today?" He was exhausted both physically and mentally today, but he was not too tired. Dancing Nyo opera requires a lot of physical strength, so I rushed to Qingzhou, and I couldn't go to see Shangguan in a hurry, so I hurried to the station to change clothes. With such a tense schedule, he didn't even want to take a shower before going to bed, so why bother him at this time? Bai Shan opened the door, and Daji looked up at him and said, "Lord Lang, the county magistrate Lu has sent someone to pass the word." Bai Shan's spirit was lifted, and he was instantly refreshed. Today's efforts have paid off. Although it is tiring, of course, I have to do things like picking the fruit myself. Bai Shan went out, turned around and closed the door, quietly, and Daji went to the back door of the inn. A servant was crouching at the base of the back door. Bai Shan was speechless. "Why can't you go through the front door? Although the front door is guarded, if you don't want people to know, you can just pretend to be a hawker. It always feels more problematic to meet at the back door." Zhou Man heard that the door was closed, raised his head reluctantly and glanced at the door, and then continued to lie still. The cakes that followed her finally lined up a bucket of hot water in the inn. She brought it over and poured it directly into the wooden basin on the shelf. After mixing the cold water, she went to Pul's human. "My lady, wash up first." Zhou Man lazily got up to wash, changed his clothes, and removed his hair, and then leaned on the bed comfortably. But now she was in a better mood. Bai Shan was also refreshed and ran back excitedly. He pushed open the door and glanced at Zhou Man, rolled up his sleeves to wash, changed his clothes and quickly got into the bed. His eyes were bright and he said to Zhou Man, "You know Luxian, did you give me any news?" "What news?" Bai Shan said, "Guo inspector wants to use a lot of official salt." Zhou Man was surprised. "Isn't this in your arms?" Yes, the new salt farm can be expanded further, Bai Shan said. There are not many ways to get official salt in our county. If the Qingzhou prefectural government is willing to come forward, it will be guaranteed, no matter how many officials I have. Salt, they can all eat. Zhou Man felt that this was a bit wrong. She scratched her head and said, there is so much salt on the market suddenly, isn't the price going to drop? Will those people send official salt to the government office? Bai Shan smiled and said, we are only one county in Bihai County, and there are not many salt fields open at the moment. How much more can we go out? In the future, when this method is popularized, there will only be more. He turned around, leaned side by side with Zhou Man, and said, but your concerns are not bad. It involves people's livelihood and national affairs. It is necessary to prepare in advance. It seems that I have to write a seal. On the day Bai Shan returned, he prepared to secretly fold, and asked Daji to personally go to the new salt farm to pick up a jar of salt and come back. As soon as Zhou Man saw it, he immediately said, I also have something to give to your majesty and Lord Wei. During this period of time, she walked around the streets and heard some remedies, some of which sounded unreasonable, but there were also available remedies, and Zhou Man figured out a 2-flavor health-preserving pill. It is to nourish qi and blood, soothe the liver and relieve depression. Zhou Man also added some rose sauce to it. She thinks it is delicious. Recently, she also used it to mix another kind of pill, which is for Empress Mingda Changjiu and the prince concubine theirs. She also eats it occasionally, especially when she is in a grumpy mood and wants to lose her temper with Bai Shan. Although it doesn't work very well sometimes, she will feel better when she eats it sweetly. Zhou Man took out the bottles and jars in his arms, spread the burden directly, asked Mei to prepare pen and ink paper, and wrote a label for her to paste it on. I wrote everyone's name on the bottle, go back to them, you can tell at a glance. Bai Shan curiously picked up the emperor's bottle, opened it and said, you still dare to deliver medicine to His Majesty from outside the palace? He opened it and saw what was inside. He was speechless for a while. That's all, Your Majesty should understand. The emperor couldn't understand at all. He received a package of bottles and jars. Because of curiosity, he didn't go to open Bai Shan's secret folds, but first opened the package and looked at the bottles and jars. One of the jars is very large, and it is different from the other bottles with writing on it. It is a very ordinary earthen jar that can be broken when it is dropped. So the emperor was very curious and opened the big jar first. Gu Zhong was so frightened that he hurried to stop it, but he didn't stop it. Seeing that the emperor was too hard and some white particles popped out, he went up to twist one and put it in his mouth to taste. After tasting it, I was stunned. Salt. What are Master Bai and Master Zhou doing, sending a jar of salt all the way? The prince also took 2 steps forward curiously. Why does this look a bit like salt? The emperor also twisted it up to eat. Gu Zhong grabbed his hand and quickly wiped it with a handkerchief. Your Majesty, you can't eat anything outside, even if it was given by Lord Bai and Lord Zhou. How do you know it wasn't exchanged on the way? He said, this is salt, salty, and it is no different from ordinary salt. The emperor said, no difference, the 2 of them have nothing to do when they are full and send me a jar of salt for thousands of miles. The prince in front of the desk reminded, Father, there are other bottles. As soon as the emperor heard it, he looked at the words on the bottles and jars and recognized Zhou Man's handwriting, so he found the bottle with the word emperor written on it. The emperor has already opened the bottle quickly, and he said indifferently, since it can be delivered to my eyes, then there is no problem. I still have the courage to open a bottle. The prince also felt that Gu Zhong was making too much fuss, so he stared at the bottles and jars on the table, where he saw the names of himself and the princess. He glanced at his father and decided to share a little for him, so he reached for his own bottle. The emperor had already looked into the bottle, and silently took out a small note from it, and only poured out a round medicine. The emperor opened the small note, and there was only one sentence in front of him: pills for nourishing qi and blood, soothing the liver and relieving depression. Knowing that your majesty is often angry, you can take this recipe for a long time, 1 pill a day. The recipe is as follows. The emperor lifted his eyelids to look at the prince, and saw that the prince also poured out a small note and a pill, and his heart was barely comfortable. He rudely reached out to the prince. The prince glanced at the emperor, and respectfully sent the note up. See you at 7 p.m. I was reading the novel with my phone, and I saw half of the notifications that I wanted to read the class, so I started looking for my phone. I searched every corner of the desk, including behind the computer, but couldn't find it. I searched everywhere in the house and panicked. Did I end up in the cafeteria? I was sitting in a chair in despair, and was hesitating whether to go out and look for it. I saw the mobile phone that finally reached the brightness limit and went down with a black screen. Me, you are by my hand, but you squeak. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2943. The emperor opened the prince's note and read, pills for nourishing essence and qi, soothing the liver and relieving depression. Your Highness Prince, your bad temper is due to the strong anger of the anger, but usually the prescription for nourishing essence and qi is not used properly, it will get angry. This recipe is just some ordinary medicinal materials, which can be eaten as food at ordinary times, and the medicinal properties are not so strong. The emperor glanced at the prescription under his eyes, pouted his lips, and found that it was almost the same, only the compatibility of the two flavors was different. But the prince's instructions are more detailed. Why? He checked back and forth, and found that most of the recipes of the two were the same, and even the production methods were similar, so he lifted his eyes and glanced at the prince. The emperor turned his head and said to Guzhong, Xianxiao Academy is coming. Why there is a difference, you can ask a professional to know, and it is useless for him to guess. The emperor was not in a hurry to see Bai Shan's secret folds, and liked opening the bottle. He skipped the bottles of the Empress and Mingda, and directly took out the bottle for Wei Ji and opened it. When he poured out, he found that there was also a medicine and a prescription inside, and he couldn't help but pouted. Zhou Man really treated them equally. It's okay to be careful with him and the prince, who will harm him in Wei Ji's place. Why be so careful? The emperor opened the small note and looked even more unhappy, because he and Wei Ji had the exact same prescription. The emperor, who always liked something special, was not very happy. He glanced at the prince. In the end, the most special one was the prince. The prince looked at his nose and stood with his eyes down. He felt the emperor was looking at him, so he reminded him, Father, do you want to take a look at Bai Shan's secret book? It is not certain that Xiao Yuan is not in the palace. I don't know when it will be when people come over, so it is better to check the secret first. The emperor looked at the remaining bottles and was not very interested. He could imagine what the pills Zhou Man gave the queen and them. So he started to open Bai Shan's book and read it. He was also curious. It's okay to send pills. What is the purpose of sending a can of salt for thousands of miles? The relaxed smile on the emperor's face slowly fell after seeing Jizi, and his back could not help straightening. With sharp eyes, he read the book back and forth several times, pondered for a moment, and handed the book to the prince. When the prince saw his father's face, he knew it was a big deal, and he took it over quickly. The emperor said to Guzhong, who had already passed the message, go and invite Wei Ji. The emperor paused and then said, and Lu Shangshu and Lord Tang. Guzhong hurriedly bowed his head in response, hunched over and backed out, summoned a small servant, and said in a low voice, quickly invite Lord Wei, Lu Shangshu and Lord Tang to come. After receiving the order, the little servant quickly went out of the palace to find someone in the imperial city. Unfortunately, the three adults are not on duty today, and they should be in the imperial city at this time. After Gu Zhong entered the hall, he waved to the waiter and the maid who were waiting inside, and they bowed their heads and retreated in an orderly manner. Gu Zhong thought for a while, and felt that knowing more about some things would indeed hinder his lifespan. Just as he was about to quit, he heard the emperor say, "Pack up these bottles and jars and send them to the queen." Gu Zhong breathed a sigh of relief when he heard the words, and immediately stepped forward and put the bottle with the queen and the others on the label and put it in the bag. Just as he was about to retreat, he saw the emperor twirling the salt in the salt shaker and eating 2 mouthfuls. The emperor pondered, "It's worse than the salt used in the palace, but it's much better than the salt sold in the military and outside. It has a less astringent taste and a whiter color." The prince also scratched his finger and ate it. Except for the salty and a little bitter taste, there was no difference. Who eats salt dry? Isn't it all eaten with dishes? When the emperor saw him, he didn't understand, and sighed, "You have never endured hardship. When you are marching and fighting, 2 things are the most indispensable. One is food, and the other is salt. The former can survive, the latter is strength. Only by eating salt can you have strength," the emperor said meaningfully, twisting the salt in his hand. "Salt is also classified in the market, high, medium and low. The coarser, more astringent, darker salt is, the worse it is. It's not really good, but it's definitely above average. Prince, isn't that the middle and upper class?" The emperor nodded. Gu Zhong took the burden and exited. Before exiting, he heard only one sentence, "But if the salt comes as easily as Bai Shan said, then the sky in Jiangnan will change." Gu Zhong closed the door, summoned his apprentice, and handed the burden to him. "This is the burden sent from Qingzhou, quickly deliver it to the Empress Palace. You deliver it yourself, be careful with the bottles inside, don't break it already." The apprentice should go down. Immediately took the burden and left. Gu Zhong was just outside the door, leaning against the door and staring at the blue sky in a daze, and soon closed his eyes slightly, as if he was sleepy. He opened his eyes again because he heard footsteps. When he opened his eyes, there was a smile on his face, and when he saw Wei Ji and Lu Shangshu Laotang who were coming with him, he immediately stood up straight, bowed slightly towards the three, and said with a smile, "The 3 adults are here, please wait a moment, our family will report first." When the 3 Wei Ji saw that Gu Zhong was not accompanying the emperor, but guarded outside the door, they couldn't help but glance at each other, and their hearts were a little dignified. Gu Zhong is already a very important confidant of the emperor, what can make him stay outside? The Dragon Boat Festival has just passed, and nothing has happened in the court recently. Gu Zhong went in to report, and came out after a while, bending over and saying, "Adults, please come in. There are only the emperor and the prince in the hall." The emperor motioned the prince to show them the secret fold. The prince also finished reading, and at this time, he was in a state of ups and downs, and he handed it over to Wei Ji. The father and son didn't speak, apparently waiting for them to finish reading before talking together. Wei Ji scanned the entire Zhangmi Zhe with 1 eye and 10 lines, then read it again, made sure that Bai Shan was not joking with them, and then handed it to Lord Tang. Old Master Tang disliked him for being too much ink, and when he got it in his hand, he directly pulled Lu Shangshu to read it together. Seeing the middle, the two couldn't help but look at each other, then lowered their heads to continue watching. There was no words in the hall for a long time. The emperor glanced at the faces of the 3 ministers, and said quietly, "If this matter is true, then the places where I can produce salt in Great Jin will be 10 times more than the present, and the quantity and quality of salt production will also far exceed now. Except for the south of the Yangtze River, all coastal areas can produce salt, so there is no need to worry about the lack of firewood and the lack of salt cooking technology." Lu Shangshu said subconsciously, but is Bihai County willing to hand over this law? The other 4 people in the room glanced at him. Bai Shan's secret statement made it so clear, he must be willing. Lu Shangshu also felt that he had said something stupid, so he touched his face and said, "This minister is stunned, Your Majesty, how should I use this method?" Old Master Tang, propaganda, let other salt farms try this method. No, Lu Shangshu and Wei Ji said in unison, looked at each other and paused for a while, and finally Lu Shangshu said, "This method must be kept secret first. See you at 10 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl." Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2944. Old Master Tang looked at him as if he were looking at a corrupt official who made trouble without reason and had a black face. Lu Shangshu ignored him and said to the emperor, "Your Majesty, if this law is really what Bai Shan said, then I will change the salt policy of Dajin, from salt price to salt tax. It can be completed in one day, so this method must not be spread to the outside world at this time, and it can only be made public when there is a comprehensive strategy, so that there will be no chaos at that time. It is said that it is public, but it is not directly released to let the people of the whole country know, but it is publicized in the government offices where salt can be dried. Those who know it are still insiders, just like the current method of boiling salt. Apart from the officials and skilled workers who cook salt, who else knows this method? Didn't the magistrate Lu want to open a new salt farm? He would have to put people in the old salt farm to learn how to cook salt, and then bring people out after he learned it? But this scope of disclosure is enough for Dajin. Wei Ji was also agitated in his heart at this time, and said to the emperor, "Your Majesty, Jiangnan's malpractice may be swept away by this opportunity." After hearing the words, the old Tang immediately entered the role. There have always been many problems in Jiangnan. For nearly 200 years, the north has been in a scuffle. It was difficult for the family and the regime to move to the south. When they came back, the Dajin controlled Jiangnan. Somewhat weakened. At present, the most serious phenomenon of Tibetans is in the south of the Yangtze River. In addition, it is a matter of salt tax. The emperor kept holding his breath. The emperor also wanted to take advantage of this, and his eyes were shining. Salt administration is related to people's livelihood. In the past, I had to rely on them to produce salt, but now. The prince thought of his old hatred, so he was eager to try. "Father, my son, I would like to go to Jiangnan." The emperor glanced at him and said, "A gentleman does not stand under a dangerous wall. What are you doing in Jiangnan?" Wei Ji asked, "Who does His Majesty think is suitable?" The emperor pondered. He thought about it for a long time, hesitated and hesitated, but couldn't help but ask, "What do you think about Yang Changbo?" Old Master Tang and Wei Ji Lu Shangshu looked at each other, and they both pondered and said nothing. Lu Shangshu waited for a long time, but still couldn't hold back. "Your Majesty, Yang's influence in Jiangnan is not weak, and he has been involved in the salt administration a lot in the past. Although he was suppressed a few years ago, he has a lot of old friends by marriage and sent Yang Changbo. Go, I'm afraid it's not right." Because of the excellent relationship between his son and Yang Changbo, old Master Tang knew Yang Changbo better than Lu Shangshu, and suggested, "Your Majesty, why don't you ask Yang Changbo what he means, and ask him if he wants to go?" Wei knew, if he wants to go, then this matter has a 30% chance of winning. Not only in his identity, but also in his talents. The emperor looked at the prince. What did the prince think? Although the prince didn't like the Yang family very much, he had to admit that Yang Changbo had a gentleman's style. If he agreed, he should not be against the tide, unless their father and son took him first. However, the prince felt that as long as he and his father were not mentally disabled, they would not bear such an important minister for no reason, so he nodded. "When the time comes, let him keep his family in the capital, and I will let the crown prince take care of his family more. It is not only a hostage, but also a protection, so that he has no worries. The emperor nodded slightly. The emperor decided to call Yang Changbo to the capital to talk about it, but before that, he pushed the salt shaker in front of them and said, "Try it, I think this salt is pretty good." The three of them stepped forward and tasted it a little. The taste was indeed good, no worse than the medium salt outside. "This thing can be dried in the sea water? It's too simple, right?" The emperor was also very curious. "I have seen the sea, and I have also drank sea water, that smell." The emperor paused for a while, ignoring the taste, and said, "But soak it in sea water, get up and dry it, and rub it. It seems that there is salt on the body, but to harvest so much salt, the sea water will be led to the ground. Is it really okay to bask in the sun?" The crown prince had never seen the sea, and when he heard the words, his heart moved. "Father, why don't you go to Qingzhou to have a look?" The emperor frowned. Wei Ji looked at the prince's increasingly determined face, and then came out, "Your Majesty, His Royal Highness has become a lot more stable in the past 2 years, and he has experience in supervising the country. Why don't he let His Highness go to Qingzhou and experience it as well? People's lives are hard." Old Master Tang said, "If your Majesty is worried, send more imperial troops to protect it. Now that the world is stable, are you still afraid of bandits and robbers?" The emperor also thought about it. The boss is not the third child. He will manage the entire country in the future. He can't stay in the capital and watch the sky all the time. Although he has taken him out to inspect people's livelihood in recent years, he has no chance to go out on his own. It's better to go out this time. He just took a look at his character. The prince has done a good job in supervising the country twice, especially in the Eastern expedition last year. He and Wei Ji cooperated very well and managed the government in an orderly manner. His ability is beyond doubt. Of morals. The emperor said to the prince, "Since you want to observe the people's livelihood, you can't just go to Qingzhou. You can go to Haizhu along the way, but you can only go to Haizhu to see the seaside situation there, and you are not allowed to cross the sea. The state continues south. Further down from Haizhu is the boundary of Jiangnan." Although the emperor wanted the prince to experience the difficulties of people's livelihood, he did not want him to take too much risk. So it's best to stop in moderation. The prince was a little excited and asked, "Father, when is the best time for me to set off?" The emperor glanced at him and said, "What's the hurry? I will discuss this matter with Yin Li and then talk about it. Even if I understand the people's feelings, I should find a better reason. I will arrange some people for you. Your Zhan Shifu will also pick some people to take with you." The prince could only patiently answer yes. The emperor turned his head and said to the old man of Tang, "I think it is better to let the prince inspect the local government affairs and official management, and your censor station will send a censor to follow. The punishment department, I don't think they are suitable, but it is good to know the crane." Lord Tang thought for a while and then said, "The dog of the minister's generation is grateful to His Majesty for cultivation." The emperor smiled and said, "You are a tiger father without a dog, and I have heard Yin Li praise him a lot since he became Yin Li's deputy and took office as Xiao Yin. The crime detection rate in Jiangyi has increased, but the crime rate has dropped. Phew." Although old Tang was proud in his heart, he still said a few words of modesty. The monarchs and ministers temporarily ignored the secrets and talked about their own family affairs. It wasn't until Wei Ji became impatient that the emperor gave him a small bottle on the side and said, "This is what Zhou Man brought back to Iking, and Iking has a look." Wei Ji saw that the bottle had been opened, and he didn't mind it. He just stretched out his hand to take it, opened it and glanced at it, stretched out his fingers and poured out the small note inside. The emperor called out, "Gu Zhong." Gu Zhong came in, glanced at it and smiled, "Your Majesty, Xiao Yuanzheng is already waiting outside. Let him in. See you tomorrow." Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2945. Xiao Yuan was coming in depressed. He had come a long time ago, and when he called him, he was in such a hurry, but when he arrived at the place, he had to wait for so long in the side hall. If it wasn't for Gu Zhong's apprentice who personally served him a cup of tea, saying that the emperor was seeing Lord Wei and the others, he would have thought he was being targeted. Zhou Man gave me, and Prince Wei, the prince, a recipe, come and see. Xiao Yuanzhang stepped forward to take it over to take a look. Because the emperor's body has always been in charge of him, occasionally he will visit the prince, Wei Ji's pulse case he often sees, and occasionally Lu Tai will consult with him when he asks for a pulse. So he didn't need to check his pulse again, he deduced the recipe and said, "You can eat it." This prescription is just like the soup of food tonic. It can be regarded as a sugar ball. It is somewhat useful to eat, but it is not harmful. Xiao Yuanzhang suspected that Zhou Man made this health-preserving pill just to coax the emperor and the prince, but that's all, it's better to eat this than a pill, right? Xiao Yuanzhang said that the recipe is fine, let's eat it. Of course, in the end, all the recipes came to him, because he had to enter the file and make medicine. The pills that entered the mouth of the emperor and the prince were naturally made by the imperial hospital. The emperor's and Wei Ji's prescriptions are the same. Anyway, they have already made one, so let's make one more, and it can also express the emperor's love for Wei Ji. The emperor glanced at the annoying Wei Ji, and pretended to be generous, "I'm ready to send a copy to Lord Wei." Xiao Yuan responded. This is 6 days after the Dragon Boat Festival. Because Bai Shan delivered a secret envelope, the delivery speed was much faster. At this time, Bai Shan was seeing Kui Yuan and others, so he still decided to find a master for himself. After Bai Shan returned from Qingzhou City, he began to deal with the follow-up of the case. To put it bluntly, it was a judgment. He brought out the 7 people involved in the murder case, and directly sentenced Qiu Zhan after checking it. Brothers Jia Dalan and Feng Dazu are both on the list. At the beginning, the dozen or so knives on Lu Erzhu and his son were done by Jia Dalan and the 3 brothers Feng Dazu. All but them were sentenced to exile, but the place and distance of exile were different because of the magnitude of the crime committed. In fact, if they were not afraid that they would collude with their relatives to make a fortune in the local area, a poor place like Bihai County would be very suitable for them to be exiled. Bai Shan was sentenced one by one. Because of the large number of onlookers, the matter quickly spread in the county, which shocked and deterred all kinds of bastards in the county. In addition, he also sent Wei Dongxian to go to the vicinity of Dying Village, and invited the people who opened gambling booths to the county government to speak. Gambling is very popular in Dajin. Among the powerful, there are polo, horse racing, etc. The next level ones also have cockfighting and dogfighting, and the second level one is folk gambling. But the upper and the lower are effective, because the people above like it, the following naturally can't help but gamble. Although it can't help, but to open a casino, it still needs the approval of the county government. Usually casinos are also the focus of the county government. It is against the law to directly set up gambling in rural areas like them without the approval of the county government. But Bai Shan also knew that if this kind of thing is blindly blocked, it will only rebound more severely, and he has been so aggressive during this time that it is no longer suitable for him to make big moves. Therefore, he invited people to the county government office to drink tea and talk. Those who set up gambling are all scumbags similar to Jia Dalan. They don't usually work in agriculture and only want to make quick money. Although Bai Shan didn't like them in his heart, he still smiled and talked to them. Don't you have nothing to do, don't want to farm but want to make money? Okay, I recommend you to sell salted fish. Bai Shan said, the peak fishing season is just around the corner. In Bihai County, there will be merchants coming to buy salted fish. At that time, many people will be needed to escort them. I think you are very good. Since you are all idle, Why don't you help out? You can make a lot of money just by going back and forth. The bastards shrugged and refused to answer. They live well in the countryside, why do they have to do such hard work? Not to mention being a part-time escort worker, just taking out the money to buy the goods themselves, and buying and selling salted fish is also very hard work and smelly, they don't really want to do it. Seeing this, Bai Shan sneered at the corner of his mouth, lowered his eyes and lifted the teacup to drink tea. Lieutenant Dong, who was on the side, slapped the table and shouted, "Is it your face? The county magistrate speaks to you in a good voice, so it's easy for you to be bullied when you become a county magistrate." The bastards were all taken aback, and turned to look at Bai Shan, only to see that he was holding the teacup steadily, drinking tea with his eyebrows lowered, without even moving his brows. They feel bad. Sure enough, Lieutenant Dong stood up and pointed at them. Why do you think the magistrate called you here to talk? The reason why Jia Dalan and his party went to rob Xiaoliu village was because of gambling with you. Humph, you guys set up a casino without the official documents approved by the county government. This alone will keep you in jail for a few years, so don't be ashamed. Now the adults are talking to you in a good voice, you guys. Do you think this is a discussion with you? The bastards blushed, and the leader was Zhao. He glanced at the calm-faced Bai Shan and said, "What the Lord said is that we will listen to the instructions of the Lord." But he was still a little unconvinced in his heart, and said, "Sir, although we set up gambling, we didn't let Jia Dalan and the others go rob and loot money, folks in the village, we are not responsible for this crime, and even if we don't set up gambling, they will also come to the county casino to gamble. I don't believe there is anything in this world that can stop gamblers," he said. "We set up gambling in the countryside for the convenience of the villagers." Bai Shan put down the teacup and sneered, "Some people want to eat noodles, but they have to walk for 2 days to eat them, and they have to be hungry for 2 days before they can go to the place to eat a bowl. How many people do you have to go to the county town to eat this bowl of noodles? But some people put noodles at the entrance of the village, and they can eat them when they go out. How many people who didn't want to eat noodles also tried it?" Bai Shan said very rudely, "Headed by all kinds of evil gambling, this county can't control other places for the time being, but in Bihai County, if you want to open a casino, you can only open it in the county seat, and you have to get the county government office. The official documents can only be opened, and if you let this county know that you are setting up a private casino in the township, the county will not only confiscate all the gambling funds, but you will also be sentenced to prison." Zhao Hunzi and the others jumped, and bowed their heads under the stare of Dong Xianwei and said yes. Only then did Bai Shan ease his face and said, "Okay, you leave all the gambling equipment behind. Go back and listen to the news first. The county will discuss with the merchants and will send someone to inform you." As soon as they left, Bai Shan said to Weidong County, "Let people keep an eye on them. It's really impossible to let 2 yamen servants go to the village to help and take care of them. This county will never allow gambling in the village. This place is already poor, and if you gamble, it will be even poorer." See you at 7 p.m. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2946. For the casino, Zhou Man has always been quite critical. Although blocking is worse than sparse, it should also be strictly required. If you want me to say, it is almost enough to set up a casino in the prefecture. There should be no casinos in the county and township. Anyone who sets up a private casino will be caught. She said, rich people who want to gamble will naturally have the ability to go to the prefecture. Those who are not wealthy should just stay and work hard. Bai Shandao, it's a good idea, but it's extremely difficult to achieve. Since it's effective from the top, it's better to ask from the top first. When Man Bao heard this, he felt it was reasonable, so he said, "Give your majesty a discount, and let him be okay and less cockfighting lackeys." Bai Shan, his majesty doesn't seem to like cockfighting lackeys. What he likes is raising parrots. Man Bao, then we can only ask the prince not to go to horse racing. Bai Shan, anyway, even the prince has asked for it, so let's ask more people, and even ask the descendants. He rolled his eyes and said, "How about giving this envelope to Kui Yuan? Just look at his abilities." Zhou Man nodded excitedly, "Okay, okay." She also wanted to see how good Kui Yuan was in admonishing people. After mutual understanding, Bai Shan finally decided to hire Kui Yuan as his master. Because this job was not easy to come by, Bai Shan inspected it for 12 days before and after. He cherished it very much. He didn't go home after being hired. Instead, he stayed in the guest room in the backyard of the county government office, and then let the bookboy who followed him stay there. "Go home and pack up, tell my family and say that I am serving as a staff member for the Bai County Magistrate, so they don't worry about me." The bookboy should be happy. Kui Yuan took a Mingjing exam, but unfortunately didn't pass. The cost of going to the capital is also quite large. Their family can afford to support people, but it does not mean that they can afford to go to the capital again. And if he goes, he may not be able to pass the exam. So he wanted to go the other way. Examining the officials of the county government is a path, and it is not difficult. Kui Yuan passed the officials in Yuta County and Qiancheng County in the examination, but he just quit after working in the county for half a year. This year he is still hesitating whether to go back to Yuta County, because the county magistrate Lu is much more pleasing to the eye than the magistrate the year before. However, after meeting Bai Shan, he felt that Bai Shan was more interesting than the county magistrate Lu, so although Bihai County was poor and partial, he decided to stay in Bihai County. Kui Yuan was still a little excited, but he didn't expect that the first thing he did with Bai Shanho would be to write a book about the ban on gambling. Kui Yuan was a little nervous, just ban the prince from horse racing. Bai Shandao, if you replace it with impeachment, I have no problem. Kui Yuan, although he wrote the book, but in your name, aren't you from the prince? Bai Shan never thought that he was the prince's person, but he was indeed closer to the prince, so he smiled and said, "Write it down first, and I will change it later." Kui Yuan took it down. But his task is more than this. As a staff member, he has a lot to do. For example, the next day he followed Bai Shan to meet Jia Dalan, who was sentenced to be executed in court. When the clerk saw him, he smiled kindly at him, feeling that his work was finally shared, and he was very happy. In the past, Magistrate Bai did not have a master, so he did a lot of work. Jia Dalan's beard was unshaven at this time, and he lost a lot of weight. After being escorted up, he stood firmly with his legs apart. The Yaman pressed him twice and did not push anyone down. The Yaman got angry and kicked him directly in the socket of his leg, and only then did the man fall to his knees. Bai Shan looked at him steadily and said, "You don't agree?" Jia Dalan straightened his back, raised his head and looked straight at Bai Shandao. "No dissatisfaction, but I'm going to die, and I don't want to kneel to you." "Then who will you kneel?" Jia Dalan thought about it and said, "My mother can barely kneel when I am." Bai Shan couldn't help but smile and asked, "What about that day and His Majesty?" Jia Dalan sneered, "Tiandi and the Emperor have nothing to do with me. I was born by my mother. This can be said to be outrageous." Bai Shan, who considers himself enlightened, couldn't help but sigh and looked behind him. What about him? When Jia Dalan turned around, he saw that his father, who had been terrified for half his life, was being carried in from outside, with a cloth stuck in his mouth and a rope tied around his body. The sweat on the head of the Yaman said to Bai Shan, "Sir, this person is very rascal. He keeps shouting and yelling. Whenever he gets a chance, he sits down on the ground and can't get up no matter how he pulls. In the end, they could only drag him away, so the clothes on his back were basically torn. Humph, who is to blame? Unlike Jia Dalan, who held his head high, Father Jia was shivering and his whole body was soft to the ground. Jia Dalan looked at him with contempt and contempt. It was such a person who dominated his life before the age of 14 and brought him to the brink of death several times. Strange, he was so powerful in front of them, how could he be so cowardly in front of officials? In the past, Jia Dalan felt that the reason why he was so bad was because he had such a father. After all, he was his father's seed. If his father was so evil, could his son be evil? But now it seems that he is much more powerful than his father. He dares to kill, does his father dare? He is not afraid of Bai Shan, does his father dare to be afraid? Thinking of this, Jia Dalan became happy, and finally, the more he thought about it, the happier he became, and he couldn't help laughing out loud, ha ha ha. Everyone watched him suddenly laugh like a madman, and the more he laughed, the more frantic he became, and they couldn't help holding the knife in their hands. Bai Shan waited quietly, waiting for his laughter to stop before asking a further question, what about him? Only then did Jia Dalan remember his previous question. He lowered his eyes and looked at Father Jia, who was kneeling not far away. He pulled the corner of his mouth and said, If he wasn't my father, I would have broken his head. Bai Shan said with a ha, you would not kill him because he is your father. After thinking about it, Jia Dalan shook his head and said, it's not because he's my father, it's mainly my mother, she keeps stopping me, and I still have a brother. If I kill him, it will be even harder for my brother to kiss him. Originally, the family was not rich, his father was that dead, and his elder brother was a famous gangster. It would be very difficult for his younger brother to say kissing, and if there was another father killer, he would never want to say kissing in this life. However, Jia Dalan still regrets it when he thinks about it. If he knew that he would be arrested, it would be better to kill him first. Bai Shan seemed to see what he was thinking, and the faint smile on his face disappeared, and his face became more serious. He raised the gavel and patted it, and said, take what's in his mouth. Then the Yaman came forward and took the cloth from Father Jia's mouth, and then he kowtowed and said in a trembling voice, injustice, injustice, adults, small injustices. Jia Dalan was also very curious, why did Bai Shan arrest him? This person is also in the nest, beating his mother and their brothers as if they are desperate, but rarely does anything to outsiders. But beating his wife and son is not against the law. Bai Shan said solemnly, Jia Wu, you corrupted the customs and covered up the murder of Jia Dalan, do you admit these two crimes? There is a graduation ceremony tonight, so I made a wrong estimate, so I'm really sorry. Today's update is a bit sleepy, so only 2 chapters will be updated, and the remaining chapter will be added the day after tomorrow. See you tomorrow. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2947. Of course Jia Wu denied it, he didn't admit any crime. But this sin is not something he can deny. The corrupting custom lies in beating wives and being unkind, and adopting children without teaching them. Bai Shan said with a sullen face, do you know about Jia Dalan's murder of Zhao Shan? I don't know, my lord, I have never had a bad relationship with this villain. I don't know anything about his robbery of Xiaoliu village. Others in the village know more than me. Bai Shan slapped the Jingtang wood heavily, interrupted Jia Wu and said, it's Zhao Shan, not Xiaoliukan. All the way, he was thinking about rhetoric. When Bai Shan asked, Jia Wu was stunned. The name Zhao Shan rushed into his mind, and he couldn't help but turn pale. Seeing that he finally remembered, Bai Shan squinted his eyes and asked, how did Zhao Shan die? The Zhao Shan family, who had been called in advance, couldn't help but get restless and wanted to rush over, but they were stopped by the Yaman holding the board. Their eyes widened, and they didn't dare to move. Jiao Wu shook his lips and couldn't help turning his head to look at Jia Dalin, but after seeing Jia Dalin stunned for a moment, he grinned at him, probably because the more he thought about it, the happier he was. He raised his head and said to Bai Shan, "My lord, I know that Zhao Shan was killed by him." "You lied," Jiao Wu couldn't help shouting. "Yes, it was you, obviously you killed it." Bai Shan slapped the shocked Hall, and asked him blankly, "Quiet, Jiao Wu, don't yell when I ask you what to say." Could Bai Shan not know that Zhao Shan was killed by Jia Dalin? The first time they chatted in court, Jia Dalin confessed himself. Zhao Shan is a good friend of Jiao Wu, and he can be regarded as a good friend for the time being. Like him, he bullied his family and did a lot of things in the countryside. But he disappeared 10 years ago and has never returned since he left. The Zhao family is in another village, and the family is not very wealthy. Zhao Shan disappeared, and they have not been looking for it or reporting the case. If Bai Shan hadn't asked the Yamen to bring people to the county government, they would probably have been confused for the rest of their lives, and they wouldn't even be able to remember this person until they died. So the wicked are especially easy to be forgotten by the family. The reason why Bai Shan arrested Jiao Wu was to find out the body and thoroughly investigate the case. Jia Dalin is evil, but the reason for Jia Dalin's evil cannot be ignored. Local management, especially when encountering such a criminal case, should focus on prevention and education, to prevent the recurrence of such evil deeds and such evil people. Therefore, Jia Dalin must be severely punished, and the root of his evil cannot be let go. Bai Shan stared at Jiao Wu badly and asked, "You said that the man was killed by Jia Dalin, have you seen it with your own eyes?" Jiao Wushan was afraid that Bai Shan would believe Jia Dalin's words, so he nodded and said, yes, I saw it with my own eyes." Bai Shan asked, "Where was the murder?" "Yes, at my house." Jiao Wu still had lingering fears when he remembered what happened 10 years ago. It was also from that day that he was completely suppressed and beaten by Jia Dalin, and there was always a fear of being killed in his heart. Zhao Shan and Jiao Wu are friends. They both mad at each other's parents. They drink and gamble for money, and they are all together. Of course, beating your wife and children is also true. When Jia Dalin was 14 years old, he couldn't help fighting back when he was beaten by Jiao Wu again. So Jiao Wu hated and beat him even harder. In those 2 years, Jia Dalin had a miserable life. Sometimes he could hit Jiao Wu, and he could hit him back with his fists. Most of the time, the strength of a 14 or 15-year-old boy was not comparable to that of Jiao Wu in his prime. But he was growing up, and when he was 16 years old, the father and son would fight again, and Jiao Wu had lost more and won less. So he called his good friend Zhao Shan. Zhao Shan also disliked Jia Dalin for a long time. This kid dared to fight back and beat his father, instead of being beaten obediently. So I went to Jia's house for a drink, and then I preached to Jia Dalin. A man who was angry with his father and mother told Jia Dalin to be filial to his father. Jia Dalin was abnormal at that time, and he was smart. Seeing that Zhao Shan came to the house with a sharpened sickle, he roughly guessed what they meant. This is to plan him to do it without listening to the persuasion. So he didn't say anything, and when he returned to the kitchen to bring the prepared appetizers into the house, he hid a knife. He has always been ruthless and resolute. Since he is determined to fight back, he will be thorough. Zhao Shan is still lecturing. For the time being, he has no intention of doing anything, so Jia Dalin took out his knife and started to do it. He was very direct, and he slashed at Zhao Shan with his head and face covered. When he returned rationally, Zhao Shan had been cut beyond recognition, and the whole person was lying in a pool of blood. Jiao Wu, who was beside him, fell to the ground in fear, his whole body smelled of urine, and he was obviously frightened. However, Jia Dalin was very happy, and felt that he was too happy to cut people. Jiao Wu was afraid of fear at that time, not only afraid of Jia Dalan, but also afraid of Zhao Shan's death being known. He was confused and helped Jia Dalan dispose of the body. Since then, the Jia family has turned upside down one by one, and Jia Dalan is in charge, and Jia Wu no longer dares to attack Jia Dalan. Even if I couldn't help but fight him sometimes, I didn't dare to exert too much strength, for fear that he would be forced to slash people with a knife. The life of Jia's mother and several children has gradually improved since then. Bai Shan's eyes were heavy, and he asked Jia Wu to go to the woods near Dying Village to pick up the bones, and the Zhao family followed. Only then did the Zhao family cry out, and they didn't know if it was real or fake. Anyway, it was so loud that they didn't dare to look for Jia Dalan, so they asked Jia Wu to beat him, and called for Zhao Shan to return to their family. Lieutenant Dong pouted and couldn't help but say, "I'll give them back to Zhao Shan, I'm afraid they will cry even more." Bai Shan glanced at him, and Lieutenant Dong Xian immediately stopped, bent down and smiled, "Sir, the lower official is wrong. No matter whether it is a good person or a bad person, they should not be killed by individuals. If there is something wrong, we should go to our county government." This is also what Bai Shan asked for Dong County and the Yamen after the case was settled, that this idea must be promoted. If a father beats his son, it is not against the law to beat his wife. This is also against the public order and good customs. It is also illegal. The father is not kind, and the husband is not respectful. In addition to the family, there are also the county government. He asked them strictly, if the family in the township cannot restrain good people, they will report the person to the county government, and the county government will eliminate the evil and maintain a righteous atmosphere. Don't think that the father beats the son and the husband beats the wife is only a small matter in the family. Just look at the incident of Jia Dalan alone. The bad atmosphere in the family will inevitably affect the family will affect the family, and then affect the nearby here, and see this matter is 10 miles and 8 villages. Bai Shandao, counties are made up of li, and li is made up of families and hundreds of households, so every household in it should not be neglected. Under such circumstances, there have been a lot fewer people who dare to beat their wives and sons recently. Of course, many families in Dajin still believe in filial sons from sticks, and Bai Shan did not strictly demand that a father should not beat his son. The word beat was added in front of beat. Bai Shan decided to explain the words degree and mutual respect when he returned to the village. See you at 7.